This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The number of confirmed coronavirus cases passes 2.4 million globally, with over 170,000 deaths. Africa reports over 23,000 cases as recoveries near 6,000. And the Lesotho government commits to a secure retirement for Prime Minister, but Thomas Thabane is yet to react following the South Africa-mediated talks. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live here on CGTN. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi, also coming up over the next hour. In business, U.S. oil prices turn positive after historic plunge. And in sports, Japan says it has not agreed to shoulder additional cost of postponing the Olympics. Well, we begin with the latest COVID-19 figures. The number of confirmed cases has passed 2.4 million globally. Over 170,000 people have died. The U.S. has seen a surge of over 28,000 new cases in a single day. Total cases there top 780,000. That's nearly a third of the global total. About half of all cases are in Europe, with Spain and Italy the hardest hit. Spain is the second country to surpass 200,000 total cases. Turkey is now a hotspot with total infections surpassing 90,000. The Chinese mainland, meanwhile, has seen no new fatalities for the past 6 days. It confirmed 11 new infections on Monday, 4 of them from people arriving from overseas. Well, Africa has so far recorded more than 23,500 cases of COVID-19. The number of recoveries has risen to about 6,000. Meanwhile, about 1,100 people have died from the disease on the continent. Egypt maintains the highest number of infections in the north as well as in Africa. The Egyptian government previously extended its nationwide curfew until April the 23rd. On the other hand, Ghana has welcomed the end of a 3-week lockdown. There are some mixed emotions as the country has the most reported cases in West Africa. Djibouti has surpassed all other East African countries in terms of infections, reporting over 800 cases. And in Central Africa, Cameroon is reporting over 1,000 cases. In South Africa, the country's health minister says that funerals remain a concern for authorities. Even though the number of attendees has been capped, there is still much contact in providing comfort for families. The country follows Egypt closely with over 3,000 infections. Now, many countries have begun gradually ending their lockdown measures. In Madagascar, the government has lifted the restrictions imposed in 3 main cities. The lifting of measures is set to ease the capital. President Andry Rajoelina also recommends the use of a Malagasy remedy for the disease, saying it has been successfully tested.
The anti-confinement measures apply to the capital Antananarivo, Fianarantsoa in the center of the island, and Toamasina in the east. For now, public transport has resumed operations in the capital, and some schools will open on Wednesday. However, people will not be allowed to leave their city, and everyone will have to wear masks when they go out or face being punished. Madagascar has recorded more than 100 cases of coronavirus, but no fatalities. In his speech, the President Andry Rajoelina said that a remedy based on the plant Artemisia has passed tests as a potential treatment.
School children should be given this to drink, but they should not drink the bottle all at once, but drink little by little throughout the day. You can drink it at home, make a preparation. It is a bit bitter, but the taste is still good. All trials and tests have been conducted, and its effectiveness in reducing the elimination of symptoms has been proven. for the treatment of patients with COVID-19 in Madagascar. I am convinced, I am persuaded that, in fact, history will prove us. But today, there are already 2 cases that have been cured with the Tambavi CVO+, but we will see what happens next.
Full details of the test described by Rajolina were not immediately available. The president claims the remedy, COVID organics, and produced by the Malagak Institute of Applied Research, is an alternative remedy to prevent and cure the virus.
The COVID-19 organics will be used in prophylaxis, that is in prevention, but clinical observations have shown a trend towards its effectiveness as a curative remedy. Other clinical studies are currently underway.
The coronavirus pandemic has triggered a rush for herbal formulas, lemons and ginger in the belief that they can protect against the virus. Experts have warned that there is no scientific evidence that these alternative remedies can prevent or cure the illness caused by COVID-19. Chaumgono, CGTN.
The UN Refugee Agency has warned that ongoing violence in eastern parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo can derail efforts to contain the coronavirus. More than 5 million people have been uprooted by conflict within the DRC's borders. UNHCR says the insecurity in the DRC could make it harder for the displaced to access public health facilities. As part of their response to the crisis, the agency is working to improve sanitization activities as well as regular temperature screenings at entry points of camps and transit centers. Additionally, in a bid to reduce physical contact, the UNHCR is using mobile phones to transfer funds to displaced people who have been provided with mobile phones and SIM cards.
What we do have concerns about is making sure that while we are very much, and rightly so, focused on COVID and the fight of the response for that, that we don't forget about the other sort of crises that are very serious.
Now, a local initiative in Somalia's capital is creating hope for thousands of people by producing reusable face masks to assist in containing a potential outbreak of COVID-19 in the Horn of Africa nation. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo visited the center and filed this report from Mogadishu.
It's a busy day at this vocational institute in downtown Mogadishu. Hafsa and many of her colleagues are on a mission to save lives as coronavirus infections continue to rise in the country. Their task is to make thousands of reusable face masks amid a nationwide shortage.
I have worked on 30 pieces so far. We make sure we use the right material in order to protect people. We make the material light but effective enough to make sure it blocks any transmission of the virus.
The center previously trained vulnerable members of the society, including displaced persons, on garment making and fashion designs. Organizers say the objective is to build resilience among communities. The project is being implemented by humanitarian organization Save the Children with funding from the German government.
We have activated a total of 25 people, 10 men and 15 women, who trained in garment making and fashion design. They received their diplomas here, and due to COVID-19, they have stopped other activities to make face masks in order to save lives.
The country's coronavirus cases have gone up with more deaths recorded than recoveries. Few people wear face masks while social distancing measures are yet to take effect in the country. Meanwhile, prices of surgical masks and other hygiene products have gone up, meaning majority cannot afford to buy them, with a box of disposable masks containing 50 pieces now trading for $50 to $70. Organizers of this initiative say reusable face masks like this one could save thousands of lives in Somalia. And with a weak health system, health experts are warning that an outbreak here could be worse than in other countries.
In our first trial, we came up with 1,500 to 2,000 face masks in one day. We distribute them to vulnerable people in the society, government agencies, and sometimes we allow those making them to earn a living by selling them. We hope to play a role in containing the spread of the virus, at the same time create employment to our young people.
Once completed, the face masks are packaged, ready to be distributed. Hafsa says saving people's lives is more important now and vows to increase production enough to help contain the spread of COVID-19 infections. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Now, today marks the World Creativity and Innovation Day. Tunisian engineers and startups are marking the day by presenting their latest inventions. CGTN's Adnan Shawashi brings us more on this story.
Tunisian doctors and professors at the Faculty of Medicine, as well as the research team at the prestigious engineering school of Sfax, have joined efforts to invent machines and medical equipment to be used by medical workers in the fight against COVID-19.
Tunisian universities and research units, in partnership with the technological pole as well as the economic and industrial partners, have shown that creativity and innovation are at the heart of the fight against coronavirus. The state supports all initiatives and inventions.
Health authorities have expressed fear of a shortage of ventilators at hospitals across the country. A group of Tunisian engineers are trying to fill the gap by making ventilators available and affordable.
For patients with the worst effects of the infection, the body's oxygen levels drop and make it hard to breathe without assistance. The ventilator we have invented can push air with increased levels of oxygen into the lungs and save lives.
Members of the Tunisian Association of Research and Innovation and the Aviation Club of the South and the city of Sfax have made a drone which is equipped with thermal cameras and loudspeakers to enforce the general lockdown.
The drone can be used by security forces and health authorities from any location in a 2-kilometer perimeter to contain the spread of the virus. It can check the temperatures of people in the street and warn anyone who is not respecting the prevention measures.
Students, teachers and research units at the Tunisian universities have made 250 applications as well as inventions available to the COVID-19 task force. A scientific committee will fund the development of these innovative solutions. Innovators and research teams across Tunisia are working on ways to contain the spread of the pandemic. Authorities here assert that the fight against the virus is the responsibility of the medical teams and all stakeholders, including engineers and startups. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
In Burkina Faso, a young iron worker has invented a pedal hand washing machine to improve the hand washing systems in the country. Since the first cases of COVID-19 in the country, local initiatives have been popping up in order to help curb the virus. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has more.
This is the pedal-powered hand-washing machine. You simply pump the water with your foot and wash your hands. More of these devices are placed in front of supermarkets, banks and restaurants in Burkina Faso. The invention is seen by many as an easy way to break the chain of virus transmission.
I think that using this machine is very convenient because the risk of contamination is very low. With this hand washer, you don't touch the wrists of the tap. So I think it's well done. And I think that if everyone adopts this machine, it will be safer.
This pedal hand washing system is very reassuring. It saves us from touching the faucet, which is used by many people who are probably carriers of the coronavirus. I've seen people complaining about the risk of contamination of the old pedal-less hand washing machines. But with this, pedal hand washing machine is cleaner and safer.
Petropia George is the man behind this invention. He is a specialist in metal joinery and has a workshop in the capital Ouagadougou.
When the coronavirus arrived in our country, we found that others were making hand-washing machines and users were also touching the tap with their hands to run the water. And with these traditional hand-washing machines, the risk of contamination of the virus was real. So, it was from this observation that we tried to make the pedal hand-washing machine to prevent the virus from spreading, and it worked. There is no risk of contamination with our model. Today, everyone appreciates our work and the orders keep increasing.
George and his team of 15 apprentices make the machine by cutting iron bars and then welding and assembling them. It takes 3 hours to make a hand washing machine. Every day, they produce more than 10 machines with a capacity to hold 100 liters of water.
We came to see because our company wants to know how this pedal washing machine is made and whether it can meet our requirements. Frankly, I think it's a very good innovation because they are pedals that allow users not to touch the faucet, which will prevent contamination, and that's a good thing.
The pedal hand washing machine costs between $70 and $200. With nearly 500 infections, Burkina Faso is among the countries in sub-Saharan Africa most affected by COVID-19. The small action of washing hands can make a huge difference in the spreading and containment of the virus. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Let's now cross over to South Africa, where the Vula mobile app is becoming key in the fight against the coronavirus. Vula is a referral app that connects primary healthcare workers across South Africa with various specialists. The app allows healthcare workers to contact specialists directly, ensuring a faster and more accurate referral for patients and expert advice on how to treat them. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela with more.
Vula is the brainchild of Dr. William Mepham. Mepham conceived of the app idea while working at the Vula Metro Eye Clinic in rural Swaziland. He had experienced firsthand the difficulties faced by rural health workers when they need specialist advice. The aim of the app is to give health workers, particularly those in remote rural areas, a tool that helps to get patients quick and efficient specialist care.
My real passion is rural medicine. My home is in the Eastern Cape. So even when I was at a medical school, I did all my electives based in the Eastern Cape. So I worked in multiple hospitals there. And then while I was there, we realized we had very poor access to specialists. And then when I went to start ophthalmology, I went to Swaziland, and it was the only eye clinic in the whole country. And we used to drive 4 hours at a time to reach the rural areas, do screening, and bring the patients back if they needed surgery.
The app was initially only for ophthalmology referrals, but it quickly became clear that the functionality provided by Vula was widely needed. Specialists from several different fields donated their time to work with the Vula team to design functionalities for their own specialties. The specialists are now working with some non-governmental organizations in this time of the coronavirus.
And then now it's in 40 specialties, ranging from dermatology, cardiology. Now, especially for COVID, we've got the doctor's helpline on Vula. And there's also a specific helpline on Vula for the health workers themselves. And then as more and more people became aware of it, more and more specialties wanted to use it. You can even refer to physiotherapists, to occupational therapists, to palliative care, social workers, and they even use it for teaching at the University of Pretoria. So even medical students are growing up on Vula, if that's the right word.
The Vula app has been quite instrumental in the fight against the spread of the coronavirus.
You literally can call in for a free phone call, or price of a phone call, you get a doctor on the line. And that doctor can explain to you the issues around corona, or if you need to get tested, where your nearest testing station is, or how to manage your family. There's so many questions that are being asked by people like us. So suddenly they can get the support they need.
Non-profit organization Gift of the Givers has embarked on a mission to raise funds to assist South African medical professionals and hospitals in their effort to respond to COVID-19 cases. They're doing so with the help of the Vula mobile app that will help direct resources to where they are most needed. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Over the past week, the World Health Organization has been working closely with the World Food Programme to deliver masks, test kits and face shields, as well as other medical equipment to 40 countries. Speaking to reporters at a virtual press conference, WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus says the organization is working with partners to increase the production and equal distribution of diagnostic tests, as well as life-saving medical supplies to the countries that need them most.
Working together with the Global Fund, UNICEF, and UNITAID, we have now placed orders for 30 million tests over the next 4 months. The first shipments of these tests will begin next week. Solidarity flights continue to ship life-saving medical supplies across Africa to protect health workers who are on the front lines in the effort to save lives and slow the pandemic. This is part of the overarching drive to keep supply chains moving and ensure key supplies reach 120 priority countries. Through April and May, we intend to ship almost 180 million surgical masks, 54 million N95 masks, and more than 3 million protective goggles to countries that need them most.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he will sign an order to temporarily suspend immigration to the country. In a tweet posted on Monday, the president said the move is in response to the coronavirus and to protect jobs. This development comes as case numbers and the death toll from the virus continue to surge. While U.S. states hardest hit by the coronavirus are seeing improvements thanks to stay-at-home guidelines, but residents of other states are protesting the lockdown orders. CGTN's Nathan King reports from the White House.
It's not good news, but it is much better.
Total change in hospitalizations, you see that it's been going down. The 3-day average of hospitalizations is going down. Number of intubations is down again. That is great news. Not down as much as yesterday, but down.
And it's not just New York. A similar picture seems to be emerging in other hard-hit states like Illinois and Louisiana. And the stay-at-home guidelines seem to be working. But the next hurdle is testing. Many governors say they need the White House to step up and provide more diagnostic kits so they can think about reopening. The White House maintains it is doing enough.
Provided each governor with a list of the names, addresses, and phone numbers of the labs where they can find additional testing capacity within their states. Many, many labs. We're providing you with a list. We'll show it to you now. If you need it, we'll give you the details. But hundreds and hundreds of labs are ready, willing, and able.
Some can't wait for tests. Protests against stay-at-home orders in some states this weekend. One in Denver, Colorado, leading to a standoff between a healthcare worker and a protester. The US president has expressed sympathy for the protests and is urging some states to open up. Some are, despite official White House guidelines, to open up in phases.
Theaters, private social clubs, and restaurant dine-in services will be allowed to reopen on Monday, April the 27th.
With 22 million Americans filing for unemployment benefits in just 4 weeks and government programs with hundreds of billions of dollars running dry quickly, it's obvious that the US economy needs to be turned back on. But fears are going back too soon could lead to a resurgence of cases, and that could be bad for the economic health of the country and otherwise. Nathan King, CGTN at the White House.
You're watching Africa Live here on CGTN. It's time for us to take a short break, but stay tuned. Here's what's coming up. Lesotho government commits to a secure retirement for Prime Minister, but Thomas Thabane is yet to react following the South Africa-mediated talks. And Boko Haram suspects die of poison in Chad jail.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. Now, Lesotho's government has agreed with South African mediators and political parties to give Prime Minister Thomas Thabane a dignified retirement. Thabane has pledged to step down at the end of July, but it has now been agreed he will leave office immediately. He has been under pressure to resign over the killing of his estranged wife in 2017. He and his current wife are suspected of being involved in the murder. Both of them have denied the charges. Over the weekend, Thabane sent soldiers and armored vehicles onto the streets of Maseru to restore order against what he said were rogue national elements. The diplomats stepped in to try and calm tensions. Right now, CGTN correspondent Angelo Coppola joins us for more on this story. Angelo, the Lesotho government has committed to what it calls a secure retirement for the Prime Minister. What exactly does this mean?
Well, this is Lesotho, so it could mean absolutely anything. Realistically, though, it probably has to do with security arrangements, specifically around his physical protection and that of his family. Whether he remains in Lesotho, of course, or not is an open question as well. But you'll recall that he went into exile in South Africa several years ago after an apparent threat on his life. Of course, his retirement plans could obviously be beyond his control, as he still has to kind of go through that murder charge that he and his current wife are facing right now. So that might be well beyond his means of control. So as it stands right now, we'll have to wait and see, but it looks like it has to do with his physical presence.
And Angelo, it does seem that there has been some kind of mediation. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, there's been ongoing mediation in Lesotho for several years now. In fact, it's been driven by the AU and SADC. Cyril Ramaphosa was the previous special envoy appointed by Jacob Zuma at that point. That was during the last crisis that saw Thabane become the latest president. Ramaphosa was, of course, there when there was that mini coup attempt, or that coup d'etat, which saw the head of the army getting killed in an alleyway. The country, of course, has been volatile, and the political landscape sees many coalitions forming and reforming depending when elections happen. So the latest mediation is simply a continuation of years of involvement, and some would call it meddling in the sovereign state's affairs.
Angelo, this is obviously a dramatic turn, but what does this mean now for the Prime Minister, and has there been any reaction from his camp?
Well, look, it appears that he's accepted the deal, but again, this is Lesotho, and he hasn't responded to the media briefing publicly yet. That's not to say that the deal hasn't been accepted. It's simply the nature of the political environment that Lesotho is all about. There's no question, though, that there's been a lot of wheeling and dealing that's been going on in the background, behind the scenes. That's just the nature of politics, as it were. We do, in fact, we have reached out to the Prime Minister's office for some kind of reaction, but not unexpectedly. There's been no response to our inquiries just yet. But who knows? He may or may not still come out and acknowledge and accept the offer that's been placed on the table in front of him.
Angelo, thank you very much for that. CGTN's Angelo Coppola joining us live there from Johannesburg. Elsewhere, 44 suspected Boko Haram jihadists have been found dead in a Chad prison where they were being held in the capital, N'Djamena. Opposition and rights groups say that they could have been murdered, while more speculation revolves around the idea of collective suicide. Here is CGTN's Jane Keogh with that report.
An autopsy carried out on 4 of the dead prisoners revealed traces of a lethal substance. Some died from heart attacks, while others suffered from suffocation. They'd been captured during an army operation around Lake Chad.
We did a head count. We found that only 44 of 58 prisoners were actually called back to God under circumstances we don't know about.
The accused were meant to have been tried by a criminal court. They were allegedly mistreated under confinement in a single cell, having no food or drinks for about 2 days. However, officials say that the suspects were fine the day before they died.
We have automatically decided to open a judicial inquiry to determine the cause of this mass death of inmates. So far, the medical examiner is still going with the examinations, but we already have autopsy pictures. Some of the lungs are burnt.
The government says 14 prisoners who survived would be questioned over the circumstances of the deaths. No such group suicide has occurred in the past.
As the bodies were rotting, we couldn't keep them, and the City Hall Health Department, along with the other authorities, decided to proceed with the burial of 40 bodies. And the medical examiner decided to take a sample of 4 bodies to do his autopsy.
Some say the prisoners could have swallowed poison to avoid divulging strategic information, while others speculate that they could have been following the example of the Islamic State group leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. He blew himself up when a US raid cornered him into a dead-end tunnel in his Syrian hideout last October. Jane Keo, CGTN.
Let's turn to East Africa now, where the second generation of locust swarms are sweeping across Somalia. The Horn of Africa nation is deploying surveillance teams and specialized vehicles to prevent the desert locust swarms from ravaging crops and pastures. The insects are threatening the livelihoods of 4.5 million people in the country. Somalia declared the infestation a national emergency on February the 2nd, but the nation has struggled to control the swarms due to insecurity and a lack of resources. Somalia needs $57 million to contain the infestation. So far, international donors have committed almost 40% of that required money to help the country recover. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his rival Benny Gantz have signed a deal to form a government. It will end a year of political deadlock in the country. Sources say the deal would allow Netanyahu to stay in power for 18 months. Gantz will then replace him for another 18 months before Israel holds another vote. The country has held 3 elections in the past 12 months after neither politician won a majority to form a unity government. Early on Sunday, thousands of protesters demonstrated in Tel Aviv, condemning Netanyahu's continued rule. Chinese President Xi Jinping has visited northwest Shaanxi province to learn about poverty alleviation efforts. It comes as the country faced a 6.8% drop in GDP in the first quarter of the year due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Ecological preservation and poverty alleviation topped Xi Jinping's agenda as he inspected northwest China's Shaanxi province on Monday. The Chinese president's first stop was Niobeiliang National Nature Reserve in Shangluo City. He inspected ecological preservation of the Qinling Mountains. President Xi also went to the village of Jinmi in Xiaoling Township to learn about poverty alleviation efforts. Just days earlier, the political bureau of the CPC Central Committee held a meeting presided over by Xi Jinping. During the gathering, China's top leadership studied what it calls the unprecedented challenges brought about by the COVID-19 outbreak. The government is seeking to navigate the economy after China faced a 6.8% drop in its gross domestic product in the first quarter of the year. China's top officials said the government will ensure people's livelihood and give priority to the use of labour in poverty-stricken areas while resuming production. The country set a goal to build what it calls a moderately prosperous society in 2020, eliminating absolute poverty. And despite the ongoing health crisis, China is determined to realise that goal.
Well, we're coming up on all the day's business here on Africa Live. Here's what's coming up. U.S. oil prices turn positive after historic plunge. And South Africa's mining sector resumes operations to avoid instability. Let's begin with the big story dominating headlines. U.S. crude oil bounced back into positive territory on Tuesday after a historic plunge below zero that shocked investors. They ended at nearly minus $38 a barrel on Monday before later rebounding. CGTN's John Terrett reports from New York.
This is a day in the history books that we will never forget. Oil is a precious commodity. It's running out, for goodness sake. One day we won't have any of it left, so it's always thought to be something that was very valuable until today. And the oil contract for May in the United States has closed down negative $37.63. That's a fall of 300% in just one day. Now, as you know, oil is traded in dollars. It's traded on the futures market, so somebody will make a contract with an oil company to actually have a delivery of oil in, say, May, June or July. And what we think has happened here is that somebody who had done a deal to take delivery in early June simply can't take the oil. They have nowhere to store it. Last week, the United States had a huge reserve of oil, the biggest ever in history. So this person presumably said, look, keep the oil company. We'll take a huge hit on it, and we're prepared to take such a hit that the oil price goes down to $37.63 negative. Now, the good news is that oil price for June, July and August is way above $20 a barrel. It's not great, but it's a lot better than being negative 37. And August is around $29 a barrel. And the reason for that is that we think that the markets are really pinning their hopes on a recovery in the third quarter. Now, banks could be badly hit, particularly if they loaned to buy this oil, which has now been handed back to the oil company. And of course, the whole oil infrastructure could change as we go forward, certainly with job losses and the likelihood of some big oil names closing.
South Africa's Harmony Gold has said it will resume operations up to 50% capacity after the government's relaxed regulations on miners during the coronavirus lockdown. The bullion miner said it expects it to take up to 5 working days to restart its underground operations. The operating free cash flow margin is expected to rise to around 55% for the quarter ended March 31st. This is compared to the previous quarter due to a rise in gold prices. The total gold production quarter on quarter is expected to be 8% lower due to the impact of the COVID-19 lockdown announced on March the 23rd. Harmony said it had suspended exploration and major capital projects. It has embarked on cash preservation and rolled forward the majority of its hedge transactions, maturing from mid-April to the end of May to protect its balance sheet. Now, South Africa's mining sector has largely been shut down since the start of the COVID-19 lockdown in late March, with only essential services staff keeping the mine at a care and maintenance level. The decision to allow operations to resume was taken to avoid instability in some deep-level mines. CGTN's Angelo Coppola takes up the story.
While coal mines that supply Eskom have been fully operational during the lockdown, the other mines will now start ramping up to 50% production levels. But there's a lot of work to do.
Specifically to reinitiate at a limited scale some operational activities, obviously with very specific precautionary measures to ensure that the buildup of gases, some of the infrastructure challenges, some of the challenges that naturally occur over time, that we can start addressing some of that and specifically start preparing some of these mines for the eventual lockdown provisions to be lifted.
It's understood that funding to fight COVID-19 on the mines was a concern, with limited budgets and no revenue being generated.
We've not limited it to social labor plan. We said we'll take a portion of rehabilitation reserves, particularly the interest thereof, to actually be used and be accessible to address the risks of COVID-19. Therefore, we are quite committed to those. If you look into the conditions that have been attached to this regulation amendment, you will see that we're also refocusing the mines to screening, testing, and actually integrate their systems to the national system.
Many mine workers in the South African mining industry come from neighbouring states, some of whom will have their own COVID-19 lockdown plans in place.
The initial program will focus on South African mine workers because we don't want to tamper with the conditions of lockdown in Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique or Zimbabwe, because they have their own lockdowns.
Where some people might be in lockdown for extended periods of time, I think we will take a cautious approach there. And I can't see the mining industry closing those positions or putting those people, in a bad situation just because they live far from the mines.
Some of the workers at the Harmony Gold Mine aren't too happy about going back to work.
First and foremost, they didn't communicate with all unions. They only communicated with the NUM. Secondly, we cannot be expected as NUMSA to advise our members to return to work when we don't actually know what steps, if any, the company has taken to ensure that the workplace is safe, that the workplace is sanitized, and that sanitation and protective equipment will be provided.
As the mining sector makes that staggered approach back to full productivity, it's going to become a case study for how the other industry sectors are going to be operating. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Isando, South Africa.
Now, Tunisia's domestic industries are stepping up efforts to manufacture over 30 million protective masks. Here is CGTN's Adnan Shawashi exploring how domestic textile factories are changing their production lines.
President Qais Said has visited the main production unit at the industrial zone in the central region of Kirwan. The head of state encouraged the factory staff to meet the 4-week deadline to make millions of face masks that are crucial in curbing the spread of the virus.
I'm deeply thankful for your relentless effort. You're working 24 hours a day, all weekdays, without interruption to make the masks.
Over 100 workers and administrative staff have voluntarily self-isolated at this industrial unit for over 5 weeks in order to provide the protective equipment for doctors, nurses and all healthcare workers who are on the front line against the pandemic, as well as the National Army and security forces.
You're all very courageous because you are making the equipment that will be used as our topmost weapons in this war against the virus. All Tunisians should take your example and be patient in this fight.
The Ministry of Industry has declared that 640 companies have been authorized to make face masks and protective gear. Accordingly, 100 additional enterprises will be granted the special agreement to manufacture protective equipment.
I have visited 4 factories. The prevention measures are very strict to guarantee the safety of the personnel and the quality of manufactured equipment. The workers are either self-isolated or the enterprises are in charge of providing transport and all logistics.
Thousands of coronavirus tests have been rolled out to factory workers. These devoted employees will not leave the production lines before manufacturing 32 million face masks.
Tunisian President Qais Said has emphasized the importance of the contribution of all stakeholders in facing the coronavirus pandemic. The head of state added that ending speculation related to the marketing of face masks and protective gear is a national priority at this crucial period. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
And staying with North Africa, Egypt has been using up its national reserve of wheat, something that worried many after some of the countries that supply the crop reduced exports because of COVID-19. The country is, however, relieved now after local farmers started harvesting their wheat. Here is CGTN's Adel Mahroui with more.
With the panic caused by COVID-19, Cairo has been rushing to increase its reserve of wheat after several countries declared restrictions on exports. Egypt was already increasing wheat cultivation area by about 10%, but waves of extreme weather decreased land productivity.
The heavy rains we have seen had an impact because of the massive volume of water absorbed in the ground. We had to harvest manually instead of using machinery. That has been the biggest challenge we have seen this year after expecting a promising season.
Harvesting season is here, which is still good news for a nation that relies heavily on wheat. Although social distancing is advised under the pandemic, yet farmers find themselves obliged to bring in more manpower.
No one can stay at home because the harvesting season has begun. We thought about getting half the labor to harvest, but because of the rain, it takes more people to harvest the crop because it's more challenging than when the field is dry.
Egypt is one of the biggest wheat importers in the world. It's been saving a 3-month reserve of that strategic crop. The harvest season boosts reserves by about 3.6 million tons, increasing the national reserve to be sufficient for up to 8 months. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
In Germany, there are over 147,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19, with deaths topping 4,800. Many shops reopened Monday, and the country's auto industry plans to resume some production this week. Germany has seen a steady decline in new cases, although officials have warned that the situation remains fragile. CGTN's Ira Spitzer has more in Berlin.
Germany has taken its first cautious steps towards opening back up its economy as shops with a surface area of 800 square meters or less have been allowed to reopen across much of the country. Previously, only stores deemed essential had been allowed to open their doors. The move comes as local governments are encouraging and, in some cases, requiring people to wear masks. On Monday, Bavaria became the second state in Germany to require people to cover their noses and mouths while shopping or riding public transportation. It's not just stores who are ramping up economic activity here. Germany's car industry is resuming production as well after a 4-week standstill. Both Daimler and Volkswagen are set to resume production at some of their European plants this week. Volkswagen says it will institute new safety measures, such as requiring workers to have their temperatures taken before coming to work. What's still unclear, though, is at what point German car makers could resume to pre-coronavirus levels of production, and critically for them, what sort of demand might be there. Volkswagen said that in March, its sales were down 40%. The car industry here employs more than 800,000 people, and German car makers are among the biggest car makers in the world. However, the resumption of normal activity in China, one of the key markets for German car makers, could at least help them weather the storm a bit better as the global pandemic continues to spread. Ira Spitzer, CGTN, Berlin.
Well, it's time to check in on the world of sports. Here's what you can expect after this short break. Japan says it has not agreed to shoulder additional cost of postponing the Olympic Games.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Well, let's begin in South Africa, where ardent fans in the most sporting, diverse nation on the continent have been suffering during this period due to the suspension of all sports activity. CGTN CS du Plessis tells us how life has changed for those who are used to cheering on their heroes in action every weekend.
The sports world is reeling after the COVID-19 pandemic shut down live events as we know it, including in mixed martial arts, where the organizations are feeling the impact. Many have offered free content to their fans, but it is not just the diehard fans who miss the events. Athletes like Gareth McClellan, one of the first South Africans to